Good evening, all. For those that may be watching, welcome. For those that are listening to our podcast, when that's be available tomorrow, Wednesday, we try to ensure that our podcast is available Wednesday. This is episode 46, and it's the Easter week. So looking forward to that. All the kids will be out there craving to get the Easter egg hunt, and more importantly, we're focusing this week about WA property as we do. Property Avenue WA is specifically about property in Western Australia, and there's been so much going on, and we have been discussing it for many weeks now. But it's been, as we described our title this week, it's chaos, and I think it is no doubt that it is chaos. There is a lot going on. The end of the moratorium happened on the weekend, so the rental moratorium. So there's been a lot of chatter about that. There's been a lot of emotion about it all. So we're going to go through that side of things tonight. We're going to make mention of OD's property stats and other bits and pieces that he quite often brings to the table. We're going to... Oscar had a rant last week. We have Oscars Rant occasionally, and he had a rant last week. It was to do about the rental situation. We're going to review that because there's a few things that he raised with that comment last week that we want to then have a look at that and just see what actually did happen over the last week or so since he had his little rant. TV's got might go on his soapbox this week as well. There's a few little things that I've been a little bit concerned about with regard to the marketplace and what's going on. So we'll wait and see where that goes. Interest rates. OD's been making mention about this for a bit now with will they increase? And there was an interesting little article that he emailed to me this morning, and we will discuss that tonight and just see where that's going. The other thing being, we always like to have a look at what are the headlines, what are the different things we've seen. There was one headline I saw that, and this is Australia-wide, but there were more than 60,000 settlement sales that were recorded in February, which was as our national market continues to go gangbusters. So that's Australia-wide, but 60,000 in the month of February. So if you're wondering if your settlement agent is busy, the answer is yes, very busy. And of course, as we always like to do, we've got, that's right, we also got You Ask the Questions, we discover the answers, and we've got some great questions that people have asked us during the week, and so we look forward to responding to those. And then, of course, we always wind up with an if question, and our if question tonight, it's simple, but a bit of fun. So we look forward to it. OD, welcome. We've had a great week, haven't we? We started off on Sunday with a little birthday celebration for my little princess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was firstly, good evening to viewers. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to the listeners that will listen to this as a podcast. But mate, that was a very, very pleasant Sunday afternoon at the Bathers Beach House in Freo. I don't think the weather could have been, in fact, I don't think any of that could have been any better than what it actually was. And I'm sure your wife had a really great time, surrounded by the people that are really, really important to her as well. So I'm pretty sure, mate, you had a hand in putting that together. So absolutely hats off to you. I think you did a marvellous job, and I'm sure she's very grateful for that as well. But the real estate chaos that is WA, mate, I think chaos is absolutely the best word to describe what we've got going on over here. It's very difficult to know which way to look. And by that, I mean, the rental market, we've said it a couple of times, it's unusual to have such a extremely hot, tight rental market, and at the same time have an extremely hot, tight, low supplied selling market as well. So in fact, I can't actually remember a time in my real estate career, which is a bit over a couple of decades, I can't remember a time where we've had both markets running so hot and creating the crisis and the chaos that we've actually got now. So we're obviously going to talk a bit more about the rental market tonight, and there's been a major shift and a major change in the conditions, I guess, surrounding the rental market, and that is the terminating of the rental moratorium on evictions and rent increases. And that obviously that termination was only a couple of days ago, and now we're physically seeing the after effects of what that actually means, and we'll see a lot more of it over the next couple of months. Not discounting, though, that the sales market is absolutely flying at the moment. I'm seeing things on social media where real estate agents are going to put up signboards on their properties, for sale. And at the same time they're putting up the signboards, they're ready to put up an under offer sticker, and in some cases a sold sticker. Properties are moving so fast. And chaotic is the best way to describe it. So I look forward to exploring a few of those issues a bit further over the next 45 minutes. You're muted, TV. You're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot to turn the mute button off or on. Before we do get into the rent moratorium and a few points that we raised last week, I wouldn't mind if you just quickly touch on a few stats as to what's been going on for the last week. I know it's a bit of the same old, but I think it's still important that a lot of people do pick up on that.
Sure.
Perhaps you can just give us a quick brief on that.
Okay, so we started with the rental market, so I'll jump into the rental market stats. In the last 7 days, there's been 769 properties leased throughout the Perth metropolitan area. This time 12 months ago, same week 12 months ago, it was 981 properties. So really big numbers there. Listings at the moment, we're still very tight, a vacancy rate just over 1%. So there's 2,720 rental properties available through the Perth metropolitan area. And a very interesting stat is that this time 12 months ago, there was almost 5,500 properties available. So around about a 50% reduction in the supply of rental properties. So again, not really new news. We've been aware of this consistently over the last 2 or 3 months, but it really is a crisis out there. Geraldton, we often touch on Geraldton to see how the rental market is going over there. In fact, I was in Geraldton last week and working with one of the officers up there. So I literally saw firsthand what's going on. If you're looking for a rental property in Geraldton today, you've got a selection of 62 properties through the whole of Geraldton. That's houses, that's units, in order to find a property that is suitable for you. So they've certainly got a rental crisis going on up in Geraldton. And again, that's not dissimilar to the other regions throughout the state. The sales market as well, I touched on it just earlier, but that's absolutely cranking as well. Over the last 7 days, 965 sales have occurred. Now, here's a really interesting stat, TV, that is dissimilar from every other stat that we've had over the last 3 or 4 months with the sales market. Because when I look back 12 months as to, okay, if we had 965 sales in the last 7 days, 12 months ago in the same week, normally it's a little bit lower because our market's a lot more active. So it's a little bit lower. But for this particular stat, same week last year, 324 sales. And why is that the case? Well, if we cast our mind back to what was going on in this week last year, that was COVID lockdown. COVID had just happened. It threw every industry into absolute chaos, including the real estate industry. And being in the real estate industry, we had no idea, no one had any idea what COVID was about to do to our real estate market. And as a result, the sales just completely dropped away. And so there was only 324 sales. Every other week, there's 800, 900, sometimes 1,000 sales. But that first week of COVID lockdown, it really did drop well down to 324 sales. And I think it's fair to say that we didn't predict the coming out of COVID and what our market has done in the last 12 months. It's been phenomenal. Final stat on the selling market is that our listings is just a touch over 8,500 listings available on the market. And again, 12 months ago, there was an extra 4,000 listings on the market. And back then, we do know that our sales market was starting to pick up towards the end of 2019 and certainly early in 2020. Then COVID happened, but we still had 12,500 listings available through Perth, and that's far closer to what we'd consider being a normal market. Today, it's just over 8,500, and that clearly identifies that there's a major shortage of sales listings available, and hence there's so many buyers at the home opens every weekend. And you're still on mute.
I've got to get in there. I'm getting this bad habit. I'm sorry.
Don't mute yourself. How about that? Don't mute yourself.
Okay. I was concerned about the when we do our podcast, we sometimes get feedback. So I was trying to be a little bit where I'm not so worried about the stream, but I am sort of conscious of the podcast side of things. So there you go.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's really intriguing stats, and you sort of seem to forget that it was 12 months ago that we were all sitting back here going, what the heck, we're in that unknown world, as I described it. So when you give that stat of 324 sales, I know, and as far as a settlement agent is concerned, we sat there and had a meeting with my staff because there was no shortage of anxiety, and I'm sure that was the same with many with regard to where are we going. And there's still, when you have a look at some of these places now, there's still people that are in business where JobKeeper has stopped as of this week. And obviously that's going to have an impact on some people and their future with regard to their business. So
just on that, TV, JobKeeper has been a big positive for real estate businesses, certainly in the first 3 or 4 months after that first lockdown. So going back about 8 or 9 months ago, JobKeeper it saved a lot of real estate businesses until we came out of that initial COVID period, and then the market's just gone bang. But it really did save a lot of real estate offices. But they are talking about now, with the ending of the JobKeeper, 150,000 jobs will be lost over the next month. 150,000 jobs. It's not 15,000, which is a big number, but 150,000 jobs is that's a very, very scary number. And I guess on the flip side, though, WA has got, I don't know how many jobs, I can't remember the number as to how many jobs we've got available, but we've got a growing economy over here, and in part a booming economy as well. And they're talking about skill shortages as well. So, there's a lot of jobs that are going to be lost, but there's also a lot of jobs available for those that are that way inclined, that are actually out there looking for work.
Yep. It is interesting with regard to the jobs, because I certainly know in our profession, the conveyancing profession, people are screaming out to get staff, and of course the difficulty with professions like ours, and no doubt the same as others, be it tradies, etc., they want staff, and but it's a specialised field, and you of course there's a training period, so you've got that lag time depending on how quickly someone picks up on if they've not been involved in that profession, that industry in the past, or they don't have the qualifications or the training background, then there's that period there where the training's required. So it's a challenging time for business, particularly when you're busy, and then on top of that you've got to do training and get people up to speed to be able to do what they do best. So it's an interesting time, not only just with regard to property, but of course the flow-on effect with regard to employment and training.
Yeah. Shall we quickly just backpedal slightly to the ending of the rental moratorium, and let's talk about what that really looks like now that it's ended?
Well, that was my next point.
Okay.
I was going to make mention about your rant last week, and you were particularly concerned and raised the point with what had occurred by the government, really all of a sudden, we might do 1,500, refurbish 1,500 properties, provide relief to the rental market. But it's now, today is the 30th of March. The moratorium is already finished. There is already a number of, I heard just over the last few days, in fact, the last 48 hours, people ringing up radio stations, be it Talkback or even some of the commercial stations, expressing, and some of it was pretty emotional, expressing their concerns and their worries because where were they going to live?
Look, it's
your thoughts? Yeah, I'd love you to carry on with that. What has actually happened and what announcements? You indicated to me the other day there was going to be possibly some government announcements, what have those government announcements been?
There hasn't been any.
Exactly.
Within the real estate industry, it was rumoured that there would be a state government announcement on Friday last week as to precisely, not in general terms, but precisely what the state government is going to do to solve the crisis that we have got. I wouldn't say solve the crisis that they've created. I think that's a bit unfair. But I do think that a lot of planning could have happened over the last 6 months to not get to this point in our crisis and then try and work out what to do so far as providing solutions for the rental crisis, which basically means increasing supply. There's not much else that can happen right now. Because we all know that can't happen overnight, so there could have been a lot more planning and forethought to go into it. Certainly this year, over the last 6 months, but definitely over the last 3 months, so that at least by the time we got to this point, the government could say with a level of certainty that, look, we're 2 months off, but there is X number of dwellings, X number of family homes, X number of units, whatever it might be, that are going to be to offer to those most vulnerable. But we're not in a position to do that. The state government's not in a position to do that. So the reality, I think, of what is going on, you hear it on the radio, you hear it on the news as well. I spoke to a very good real estate friend of mine today who operates in Perth's northern suburbs, and she mentioned to me that she was driving through the suburb, I think it was Merriwa, which I think has got quite a high population of rental properties through it. And she said it was so obvious that on this one particular street, there was 2 rental homes, possibly 3, but 2 rental homes where the 29th of March has come around and the tenant was required to offer up vacant possession or move out, basically. And what she saw, she said it was very, very sad to literally see someone that's just everything that's in the house. There's a large mini skip bin on the front lawn. There's the person's car as well. So anything of value and what they're looking to keep goes in the car. Anything that can fit in the large mini skip bin in terms of all the stuff because they don't have somewhere to go to. And I mean, they can either sell stuff, they can put stuff in the mini skip bin, and for those items of value that weren't going to fit in the bin, they just sit alongside the bin on the front verge, basically, for people to come along and pick up whatever it is that they see value in. So, and also the car itself really looks set to be a place of shelter for the foreseeable future. That might be a week, it might be 10 days, it could be longer than that, because these people simply don't have anywhere to go. So that's the absolute harsh reality. That's the truth that I almost don't want to speak of, because it really is so sad. And I dare say Merriwa and that particular street in Merriwa is not the only casualty here. I'm sure there's a lot more. So
yeah, I'm absolutely certain of that. And as I make a point, and when you listen to some of these people on radio, I couldn't help but listen, and you feel helpless, to be honest. But at the same time, it's real. It is real.
Yeah.
This talk that we've all been hearing about for a while, and we've certainly been discussing it for a while. We've been talking about a rental crisis. I think there was in the papers over the weekend and in the real estate sections talking about a crisis. We've been calling it a crisis for a while. Yes, it's a boom, but it's a crisis. And certainly as far as the homelessness is concerned, it is real. And when you hear these people that are just sort of so emotional, and I don't deny, there's probably been situations that for whatever reason they may be, some of it, perhaps you've got to consider that the landlords are under a bit of duress as well. And I know everybody thinks that if someone owns a rental property, they are rich and famous, and that's not necessarily the case either. But it's very much a balance, isn't it? And it's a difficult balance with what we have at the moment.
And where to from here? I mean, there's different motivations for why landlords require their properties back, and whether they need to sell them, whether they need to move in, whether they've got family members that have been evicted from other rental properties that they now need to come and put into their own rental property. Some tenants have done the wrong thing. Some tenants have taken advantage of the moratorium over the last 12 months and haven't paid rent, have damaged the place, haven't paid electricity accounts or water accounts or whatever. So, and I don't think that makes up the majority, but there certainly are, and there would be in any population sample size. There would be people that aren't doing the right thing. But we also mentioned last week that we believe, and the Real Estate Institute believes, that up to 98% of existing landlords, it's in their best interest to actually retain the existing tenants. And that's certainly my experience as a property manager. It's my experience as a landlord. And I dare say most of the time, that's what landlords would be looking to do. Not create this issue of homelessness, but to actually, if anything, create the certainty and security for a tenant so that they've got a roof over their head moving forward. So that all said, it's very sad what we've got at the moment. There are some medium-term strategies that the state government can invoke, which we spoke of last week. There's some short-term strategies that the state government could flick the switch on straight away that would encourage investment into our current real estate market, and for those investors in turn will provide the properties that they buy as rental accommodation. There's lots of different things that the state government could do, but in the last week I'm very surprised that we haven't seen more specific activity from the state government to solve the crisis that we've now got day by day.
But does this not, and I don't wish this to be political, but in some ways it is, but does this not highlight what we've created as far as a dominant government with no opposition? So therefore, there's very little noise coming from the opposition because the 4 or 5 people that are in the opposition really have very little say and have got a lot of things to cover, and therefore there's not a lot of noise being said. And so the state government can sit on their hands and do what they need to do, obviously be conscious of it, but there's no pressure on them to address it by,
you
know what I'm talking about?
I do. I know what you're talking about.
I
know what you're talking about. I think it might be a bit too early, probably way too early to call that, just only because we've just had a very recent election. So if we get 3 months down the track and there isn't a very clear path as to what the government intends to do to solve the rental crisis, then yeah, I think it's definitely time to make that call. But in the meantime, I think it's irresponsible that with the focus on the election, obviously the usual budget surrounding health and infrastructure spending as well, but there was very little to no discussion on housing, homelessness, and stimulating investment, private investment into the housing sector to help solve this rental crisis. That wasn't discussed at all, and nor was the ending of the rental moratorium as well. So I can't help but feel that was deliberate and strategic, but it doesn't make the problem go away. And even if there isn't a dominant party representation in state parliament at the moment, it's in the media every day. There's public outrage, there's outcry as well. So it's not something that the government can bury their head in the sand with.
Not at all. With regard to homelessness in Australia, I found a very interesting article which came through today called Homes for Homes, and it's a partnership to tackle homelessness. Now, I don't know whether you've heard of this, but it's on the rise. So in 2016, the Australian Bureau of Statistics census reported there were more than 116,000 people without a home. That's from in 2011, so that's gone up from 2011, which was 102,500. Heaven forbid what it is now in 2021, right?
Yeah.
But the the highest rise was between the age of 25 to 34.
Wow.
Yep. So that in itself is quite of serious concern. And homelessness can stem from many factors, including family violence, financial difficulties, etc. And of course, we've got this issue now with the rental crisis. So home to home is a situation where it's a social enterprise that asks property owners to donate 0.1% of the sale price of their property to homes. And that money then pooled and dispersed to community or social and affordable housing providers to increase the housing supply for those that need it most. Now, tell me if that's not a good cause.
Yeah, it is. I haven't really got the concept right in my head. Well, how would it actually work? How's it going to increase the housing supply? But in the main, any group that is prepared to go out there and make an attempt, a genuine attempt to solve the crisis that we've got, needs to be loudly applauded.
Yep, and it's done with they've done it in partnership with PEXA. So PEXA is the electronic conveyancing system. So nowadays we still have paper settlements, but there is a huge percentage of settlements are now done electronically Australia-wide, and WA is certainly one of the leaders in that area. And so through that system, you can nominate to donate 0.1% of that 0.1%. So it's not 1%, it's 0.1% of your sale price, and that be donated to homes. And so homes to homes, through their grant funding program, they can basically attend to projects that will assist with the homelessness. And to date, they've raised more than $940,000 across 8 different projects. Yeah, so it's been massive. What it means, but I will try and get some more information with regard to that, and see if we can't spread that word a little bit, because I think it's exactly what we're talking about. There's an initiative that's in place, and probably not a lot of people are aware of it.
No, mate, that's a very good cause. Just wondering, as we just race through the times, I just quickly peered up to the top corner of the screen. Should we touch on interest rates?
That was my next question. I've done my bit. So you raised the issue the other day, and you've more than once in the last couple of episodes. And then today you took great pride in sending me an email this morning saying, TV, have a look at this. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, so basically the interest rate environment is something that we've heard all year, that there's not going to be any shift in interest rates, not for just this year, not next year, but probably for 3 to 4 years. The Reserve Bank's not anticipating that there's going to be any interest rate rises certainly from the RBA level. But I've speculated over the last few weeks, probably as much as a month, that with our housing boom that's going on, and the almost uncontrollable nature of activity, it's just so hot right now, not just in WA, but absolutely in Sydney, in Melbourne, in fact, I think all the major states. We've just got such a boom, and this real estate market's a little bit out of control. So one of the things that the RBA can do, or one of the measures in is obviously interest rates, and it's a very, very attractive interest rate environment at the moment for investors, or for first home buyers or owner occupiers in general. But one of the things that they can do is make it slightly less affordable, or maybe not as attractive, and that's if we see a shift in interest rates upwards. But that, according to the RBA, is just not really in the landscape. But interesting, in the news I saw last night, and I did a bit more research today, there's actually been, outside of the Reserve Bank's doing, the big 4 banks and a couple of the smaller banks already have, just in the last 48 hours, actually shifted their 4-year and 5-year fixed term interest rates anywhere between 10 and 30 basis points, because they're anticipating that there is actually going to be an interest rate rise far quicker than what has been spoken about. They believe the cost of borrowing to them is actually going to be going up, because the popularity of these low interest rate loans has been so extremely popular. So that's creating a shorter supply for them. So that places an upward pressure on their costs. And whether or not they're looking to, try and subdue just even slightly the amount of activity that's going on out there in the real estate market is, I guess we'll wait and see. But certainly from the bank's point of view, I really think it's an indicator, TV, as to where our interest rate environment will go. And I personally think that I still think that the Reserve Bank will review where their fiscal policy is at, so far as the interest rate environment. And I really think that we will see some movement from the Reserve Bank this year.
Perhaps we seek out a broker or a banker and get their perspective of what they think is going on and what they are hearing within their within the circle. So we'll follow that and watch that with great interest. Don't mind the pun on interest, but you know what I'm saying.
Hey, you're so sharp, mate. Even on Tuesday night at 8:20, you're super sharp.
Mate, I've been up. I got up, raised up and Adam 4:30 this morning. I am bouncing out of my skin.
Mate.
What I should do, and it was remiss of me not to make mention, because this is also, the audio will be available by podcast tomorrow. So if you are interested, and we had someone the other day who said, "Oh, TV, they were driving from wherever it was down south up to Perth, and they listened to our audio." And that's the beauty of a podcast, now available via Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and pretty much a lot of your podcast directories now. You've now be able to get Property Avenue WA, and we'd love you to subscribe and get our numbers up and get that message out there. It's not a money-making exercise. We do it because we're trying to help you, and we enjoy doing what we do. We're passionate about property, and particularly it's an opportunity to discuss things specifically being Western Australian. And what I should mention, sorry,
TV, the other thing that's really, really good about the podcast is obviously they don't have to look at you and me and work out who's older.
So true. So true. And I can tell you who's older. And he's got this silly little grin on his face. But what I also make mention about our disclaimer, the information on this podcast is regarded as general advice. Your personal objectives, needs, and financial circumstance were not taken into account when preparing this content. And we always advise and recommend you seek personal, professional, and financial advice tailored to your specific individual needs before making any financial property investment decisions. So it is important, and we say all the time, please get professional assistance, because we're all different and our circumstances are always different. So please do that. So getting back to, so we've covered that interest rate. The other thing that I wanted to make mention about, I've got a little TV soapbox. You have your rant and I have my soapbox. And one of the one of the things that's concerning me, and it's been raised by a number of clients at different times over the last few weeks or last couple of weeks, and as recently as today, I had another scenario where I feel that the agents have a responsibility, and as you say, putting the sign up and putting the sold sign up before they've even put the for sale sign up is just about as what's going on. But I've had a couple of situations where clients are sort of under a lot of pressure, because they're sort of being put in a position to say, if you don't get your offer in now, folks, you're gone. It's all gone. So we get this FOMO, as we call it, the fear of missing out. So there's a bit of pressure put on. And I know it's not the case with everybody, but gee whiz, I'm getting no shortage of feedback and no shortage of clients contacting me for advice, which is separate to our settlement agency, are under duress and under a bit of pressure and asking lots of questions as to how some of the real estate agents are conducting themselves. And my concern is the market is busy, and yes, they're doing very well. But we've got to remember, and we've got to respect the people that are trying to buy, not just the people that are trying to sell. And I refer to such things as saying, well, I don't know whether this outhouse or this pergola or this patio or whatever it may be is approved. But I'll tell you what, we'll put a condition in here and you've got 14 days to follow it up. And if it's not approved, you can walk away from the contract. That is not good enough. That is simply not good enough. If you're going to list a property and you've employed a real estate agent to list your property, then you would expect, if you haven't already advised that client, the real estate agent, what is going on, then for heaven's sake, the real estate agent's got to be professional enough to check with the client and say, right, is this approved? Is this approved? Let's do some disclosures. And if we're not sure, let's go and do our homework, rather than just leading these people. Already buyers are under pressure because of the demand going out there. I just really, really feel strongly about this, and they've got to pull their heads in. And I'm of the opinion, if you're a buyer in particular and you're concerned about that, then get someone that you trust, particularly who's got some knowledge, and have a chat to them first before you sign with them, because it's going to cost someone some big money.
Yeah, mate, I totally agree. And so you see so many, you and your team see so many more contracts than I do these days. But I have had my time of looking through several contracts, and in addition, with my valuers hat on, when we were doing valuations for all the banks, when the banks are funding purchases and everything, part of the valuation process is for us to review the contract. And just see if there are any unusual terms or conditions in the contract that would actually impact the value of the property or the value that's been achieved. You do see some amazing things. And I had another really good real estate friend of mine just yesterday, who's been around in the industry for a long time, a lot longer than what I have. And some of the contracts that they've seen, some of the questions that they're getting from other real estate sales reps, is that they're a bit gobsmacked that for these real estate salespeople that have been around for a long time, they're understanding their respective contract law, the way that conditions should be written, and every condition, obviously, it needs to have the what, it needs to have the when, it needs to say how much, it needs to say who, and it needs to say, and if that doesn't happen, then what happens? Like, there's a certain way that you need to write a condition, but there's a lot of people that either haven't been doing it for a long time, haven't experienced the pace of the market that we've got at the moment. And there's certainly a shortfall in the standard of service that's being provided. So, and I'm mainly jumping on board because you're having your little soapbox against not all. I'd absolutely say it's not all agents. It's not even the majority of agents. But yeah, there are a few out there that if they're not careful, not only are they making things a bit difficult for their seller, for the buyers that are coming along, but it will actually come back to to bite them on the rear, and that's not going to be fun for everyone. So there's certainly a responsibility that they need to take their job seriously, because it's a serious job. They get paid a lot of money to do what they do, and so the two should go hand in hand. Do it properly.
Absolutely. And so I was really quite. In fact, which reminds me, our little friend, we're going to get him back on board, our Kieran Hoey, he's out and about.
And a leprechaun.
Yeah, a little leprechaun. He was out today, and he's gone that next step. He's identified a property, and I think he signed the dotted line at some stage. I don't know whether it's been
really.
Yeah, so looking forward to following up with him in the next week or so, and we'll ask him how that goes, whether his offer is accepted or not. We will get an update of how he's been going, what his thoughts were, and some of the things he may be he found that he wasn't necessarily expecting. So we'll see how we go with that over the next week. But yep, so for those that have been who saw Kieran when we first had him on board and we're following his journey, he's a first home buyer. He's gone the next level, but he's in amongst all the rest, fighting his way through. Hey, listen, you asked the questions, we discover the answers. I think we've got a few questions, so I think let's get on to that.
Sure.
One of the questions that I was asked of or sent through to me, in fact, it was asked of me, was a pool question. And interestingly, that I saw an article a few weeks back now, which was suggesting that the the pool industry was going gangbusters. There were people now identifying a pool as being an important addition to the home. And I'm pretty sure, if I tried to quickly find the article, but I couldn't do that. But I'm pretty sure that the reasoning, a lot of it was to do with the fact, well, we can't go away, so they're converting their homes, putting a pool in and creating their own oasis. But the pool question that was asked of me is, does a pool add value to a property? And being you with your valuation background, I thought it was a great question. Does a pool add value to property? And on the basis of they're not using the pool. So you've got all the people that are enthusiastic about using a pool, but there are some people that are not using a pool. Do they fill it in? Or is that going to impact on their value? Or is that just something to say, look, maintain it and do what you do? What's your thoughts?
Look, it's a really, really awesome question, and one that in my years of valuation experience, it's come up a lot. It really has come up a lot. There's absolutely no straight answer for this. Generally speaking, pools will add value just like a double garage over a single garage, or just like a large patio over no patio. These things generally will add value. Sometimes they can be, be detrimental to the value, so it can almost be an adverse thing. For example, if you've got a very old pool and say a very old concrete pool that has not been maintained, that is leaky, that the pool system, the filter and pump and all the hardware to do with the pool has not been maintained well, then sometimes it can actually work against you, where people don't look at it as an asset, they actually just look at it as a bit of a cost. That example that you're talking about, TB, can I ask what suburb is the person inquiring about?
That would be over in Cannington Way.
Right. Okay. So my evaluation experience days tells me that the further you are away from the coast, as in the beach, then the more value, generally speaking, the more value the pool will add. And that is because you are that far away from the coast. You might be in Cannington, you might be up in the hills in Roleystone, you might be out in Midland, you might be quite far away from the coast. And typically, where the coast is less accessible, in the areas that are more to our eastern suburbs, is where there's a greater value or a greater emphasis or a greater desire to have pools. That said, as you get closer and closer to the coast and you get some pretty substantial homes, some very upmarket homes, often pools aren't necessarily, I think you alluded to it, Tony, aren't necessarily only for swimming in. They actually form part of the outdoor aesthetic of the house, the entertainment area, the visual side as well. So you can have a really amazing backyard or front yard, very close to the water's edge, and a really nice, substantial modern home. But if you don't have a pool, sometimes it can actually be a missing feature of what you're trying to create in the outdoor entertaining area. So it's not about whether you need a pool to swim in, because if you walk 150 metres, you probably can swim in the ocean. But it's more so, is it required to finish off and complement the standard of the house that you've got there? So there's no right or wrong answer with it. The question also is, well, when you look at the added value of the pool, is the added value of the pool going to be the cost of the pool itself? Is the added value going to be like a depreciated value? So maybe it's only the added value to the property is only 50% of what it would cost you to put there. And in some cases, not many, but in some cases, maybe the added value of the pool might even be a bit more than what the physical cost is to put it there as well. So, but that's quite rare, but I have actually seen that happen before. But in the main, the pool generally is for swimming in, and if you're far away from the coast, then it's probably more value to you to have on the property, because trying to get to the coast is not a very likely event.
And so you get a situation where someone decides they don't get the use out of the pool anymore.
Yeah.
Is that detrimental if they decide to fill it in? Can that be detrimental if they fill it in?
Yeah, it can be detrimental. It just depends on what the plan is for them moving forward. So if they intend to sell the property in the foreseeable future, I'd seriously think that through and look at, well, they can fill it in and what's going to be the cost to fill it in versus if they don't, and if they keep it there and maintain it and maintain the equipment, what's going to be the cost of doing that. If it's a pool where they're not going to use it and they're going to be in the house for another 10 years or another 50, like for a long, long time, then it becomes less of a, well, what's it going to be worth to the next person? And it's a lot more about about your own lifestyle and what you want to do with your time, I guess, day to day. So it comes down to your own personal circumstances.
The other question that I've been asked was to do with stratas and a complex, but I think what we'll do is put that question aside because I do intend to get someone with strata expertise, because I've had a number of people ask me questions in the last week or two or three. So I thought we might just retain those questions and keep those for when we get that expert on board. Another question I've had is to do with the details of a buyer on a contract. And this is probably more a question for me than for you, but however, we'll both answer it. The question that's been raised on more than one occasion over the last week or so was in one case, one of the buyers couldn't attend the purchase and wasn't able to sign the contract. And so they were sort of, again, this is where I'm saying the real estate agent's got to get these things right. If they don't know, then go and seek someone who does before they start writing contracts up. Because if we don't get the right buyer on the contract, if it's a family trust or a unit trust or a super fund that's buying, or you're buying it with a partner and that partner is not your de facto or not your wife, the implications that can happen if it's all wrong can be significant when it comes to stamp duty. And when I say significant, I'm talking about paying double duty. So if you get it wrong, there is no excuse for ignorance when it comes to stamp duty. And we've had scenarios where people have inadvertently, without checking with their accountant, have gone and bought an investment property in particular. And then after they've bought the property, their accountant said, no, you need to buy that in the super fund, not in the family trust, or no, it can't be in your name. It must be in the family trust, whatever the case may be. And if that trust and that super fund is not identified on the contract, and depending on where that's at, and let's say your self-managed super fund, that entity hasn't been established yet, then, as I keep on saying, you can't buy a property if the baby's not born.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're buying a property and all this pressure that's on out there in the marketplace at the moment, and everybody's concerned about missing out, and the real estate agent's pushing you because, hey, listen, I've got 6 others that are trying to buy this property, so you need to get it done now. So there's a lot of pressure on everybody. You need to be aware that you need to get all your little ducks in line and ensure that you're prepared, because if you're not, it could cost you a lot more money than just simply buying a house.
The other thing, TV, on that as well is that outside of the potential for double duty, which would be a very expensive exercise, does it also throw into question the security or the integrity of the contract itself? For example, if you suddenly decide to change the buyer, does the seller necessarily need to agree with that change? I mean, obviously you have to have a variation to the contract, but does the seller have to agree to that?
Absolutely.
But what if they don't?
Well, that's an issue in itself, because absolutely, there can be.
So in this rising market, for example, if you get 30 days down the track with a contract that's been signed, and suddenly the buyer wants to change the detail, the buyer on the contract, and the seller's sitting there going, well, my property's worth another 25 grand. No, I'm not going to do that, because if you want to do that, then we don't have a contract anymore. So is that a possible scenario?
Absolutely. I haven't been exposed, and my staff haven't brought anything of that nature to my attention in this current marketplace, but certainly back in 205, 206, more particularly where people were buying and selling blocks of land. And all of a sudden the prices were going up because they were still waiting for the subdivision to go through. The titles had not become available. Suddenly someone decided they wanted to change something, or, oh, hang on, we're going to buy that with a trust now. Suddenly the seller said, no, because he can suddenly get another buyer who's knocked on his door and can offer and prepared to give him 20,000 more. So certainly I've experienced it, but not in the current marketplace, but certainly it has happened. And I've experienced it firsthand with clients who have been put in that uncomfortable position, shall we say.
Yeah.
So, yep, absolutely. Hey, another question that I had that was raised, how are we going for time? I'll do this one, and then we might have to – actually, I'll leave that, and I'll do this one because I think it's relative. The question that was raised, I've had this on 2 or 3 occasions now, just in the last few days. In fact, someone asked me this question at the birthday party on Sunday.
Oh, yeah?
If a property is being advertised from $399, which is $399,000, for example, or another scenario that we've seen, one of the questions was asked me, high 500s, what does that mean, and how should so in other words, how should the buyer approach it with their offer as the agent is acting for the seller? Where are they at? What should be the approach with something like that?
Yeah. Well, whenever that sort of a marketing method is used by an agent on behalf of the seller, it's giving you a layman's loose definition as to where they see value is, where they want the price to finish up. But so far as you and your offer is concerned and where you see value, the two events are not related. So if you see a property that says offers from $399, I think it's fair to assume that the seller's looking for an offer in the early 400s, something like that. But does that mean that you can't put in an offer at 385 and see how you go? Absolutely, it doesn't mean that. You can. The agent may suggest to you that they're not going to write up the offer, they're not going to present the offer, or they're not even going to take that to the seller, which is technically something that they can't do, that they shouldn't do. And also it's not even really in their best interest, but that's just a price guide it's a price guide to the buyer as to where the seller sees value, where they see that the end sale price is going to end up, what it is that they're looking for. But how you broach that as a buyer, and in terms of your offer, you can offer in that expected range, you can offer at the $399 mark, you can even offer below that.
Okay, so we will hopefully that'll be available on the podcast, and people. What we're going to do as well, we're going to start doing snippets. We're going to put little snippets in so that those some of the things that we've identified in our podcast and our streaming, we're going to try and download those, post those on our social media pages so that you can have a look at some of the individual questions rather than going through the whole podcast if you're struggling with time. But Easter coming up, you'll be able to sit back and just listen to the podcast, I reckon. You'll have all the time in the world.
Who, me?
No. The people that may be listening and want to know about what we're doing.
Yeah. Look, I think there's a lot of time. There's a lot of downtime. There's probably going to be a lot of travel time, and a lot of that might be on the road as well. So I can see the Adams family or the Brady bunch cruising down the road to Margaret River or heading up to Exmouth, and the whole family listening to Property Avenue WA. What better way to kill an hour or two?
I know. So travel safe, folks, while you're listening. We're watching. Mate, it's been fabulous, and I won't go through the headlines for the week because a lot of it has been pretty much what are the things that we've discussed. There are a couple of other items that I will perhaps raise next week, but there just seems to be so much going on every week. We could go for 2 hours, I reckon, but people would get very bored, I reckon, and we don't have enough time. But listen, I think we've got to have an if question. We
Yeah,
always finish
give me
this week.
one. Have you
So,
got
okay,
something prepared?
you know me, I'm always prepared. If you were a professional sports person,
Yeah.
right, what sport would it be and why?
If I was a professional sports person, what sport would it be and why?
What sport would you
Okay.
choose and why?
Look, I'm a bit torn with this one because I have been loving my squash over probably the last 10 years, I reckon. Absolutely love it. And over the last month, as you know, I've had a bit of a knee, not quite a reconstruction, but a bit of a clean up and a clean out, and I haven't been able to run around. And I'm itching, TV, absolutely itching to get back on the squash court. So I would love to be and get to a level of a very high standard squash. But the reason why I'm torn is I am so passionate about teams and what good teams do, whether it be a real estate team or whether it be a netball team or a soccer team or whatever, that I can't see. And obviously, squash is not really teams. You can play in teams, but you're not playing with your teammates all on the court at the same time, all trying to score the goal or kick the goal. So I really would see myself in a team environment. And if that had to be a sport, it would either be soccer or rugby union. That'd be me. What
Really?
about you? What about you?
I probably, on an individual basis, I played a lot of team sport in my day, so I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed that, and I've been lucky enough to. My main game was hockey, but I also loved my basketball, and I enjoyed the team environment with that. Probably in my day, a bloke 5'7" was acceptable in a basketball team, but I don't know about professionally these days. I think you need to be about 7'50". But the other sport that I would probably really enjoy with the team environment, I would love to be in the Australian cricket team. That would
Oh
be
yeah,
that would be something that I would just love to be a part of.
yeah,
Whether it be as a player or be it a manager or be someone involved, be it the coach, because I think that environment, what they have to offer, they travel the world. And it's not just the travel the world, but it's just the things, the culture, the team environment, and all the other things that go with it. Yes, they generate some good money, but I think cricket nowadays, not only is it Test cricket, but you can play the short form and you can play the 50 over game. Yeah, I reckon I'd love to be a part of that. I really would. I mean,
there's something about the cricket. I didn't even think about that when you asked me the question, but yeah, the Australian cricket team, in particular, the current Australian cricket team, under the guidance of one of WA's best, Justin Langer. He's the epitome of what I talk about and what I really firmly believe myself in terms of teamwork. But I'm so glad, TV, that you didn't mention golf for yourself, because so it really means that you've finally accepted, after all these years, that your fascination and love of that little white ball that very rarely actually goes straight is not something that you actually want to be any good at. So it's fantastic.
Oh
mate.
no. More than happy to be a professional. That would be second option. But I'm a bit like you. I just love everything about a team environment. There is something special about a team environment. I've been lucky to do that. And so that's what it is. And those philosophies I sort of very much use in my business, and the way and how I sort of respect and both with our clients and our staff, that environment, that respect, those values that you have, which is so important in a team sport. So that's where I'm
great.
going.
Me too.
Hey, listen, we've got to wind up, mate. We've just rocking along so much. I thought we'd do it under 1 hour today, and we're 30 seconds away. So been a great, again, really appreciate your contribution. Lots of good questions, and I'm sure if anybody does have any questions, you're always welcome. Zip them through on our Instagram account or put them through our Facebook page. So Property Avenue WA does have their own pages, so you can put it through there. Oscar and I are always available during the week through our respective business. If there's something that you want to ask, you're always welcome. But we just look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a really good Easter from the two of us. Not too much chocolate. Kids enjoy the Easter egg hunt on Sunday. To everyone else, and to my little princess, her actual birthday's on Good Friday. So, sweetheart, happy birthday. Looking forward to celebrating
happy
that one.
Happy birthday, Jude.
Thanks, mate. Hey, listen, take care, and see you next week.